Hey, it's Janan Shin. Today I want to give you a quick video training on the process of strategic insight. Strategic insight is really what von Clausewitz in Von Krieg or On War called Coup. This is what Napoleon and other people said was a natural gift from God, the ability of high-class, highly skilled generals to intuitively map out strategy. But there's a process for this, and in this video I'm going to teach you this process, or an overview of this process. And this is actually a bonus training that's included in my Lost Arts of War training program that you can get here at earthwaterfireair.com. So I'm going to give you just a very general overview of this. You can probably get some very interesting and very useful ideas that you can take away and begin applying right now. If you'd like the full training, I'm including it as a bonus in my Lost Arts of War training program, which you can get access to right now. So this is your brother Janan Shin, and let's just go through the magic of television right into the screencast video and talk about the process of strategic insight, or the development of what von Clausewitz called Coup.
Okay, so we want to talk about this PCVP framework that we're going to be using. This PCVP framework is one of the main reasons that I've been able to be so personally successful, why I've been able to start multiple successful businesses, why I've been able to live and travel around the world, and why I've been able to build and maintain great relationships and keep great people around me and influence really powerful and effective people. So this basically stands for problem, cause, vision, path. Now, I stumbled onto this framework while I was living at the monastic university here in Myanmar, or Burma. At that time, I was living there, studying and living with the monks. There were nuns on the other side of the compound. And as I was studying, I was really trying to look at things from a strategic angle, because I had had a deep background in strategy and strategic thinking, and I was looking at this stuff in terms of how can I personally manage my own self-awakening. But not only that, I was looking at what is the overall strategy here, and why has this stuff been so influential? Why have billions of people converted to this practice, or these sets of practices, or in many cases this religion? So I just started looking at things from the perspective of strategy, and a content strategy as well, actually. And I realized when I was studying the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha, or that the Buddha taught, which were dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, the path which leads to the cessation of dukkha, or the way that leads to the cessation of dukkha, and the path that leads to the cessation of dukkha. In this case, we could translate dukkha a few different ways. I'm going to just translate it as unsatisfactoriness or stress. So the first noble truth is that existence is inherently stressful. The second noble truth talks about the cause of stress or unsatisfactoriness, and that's in Pali language, that's tanha, or thirst, or desire. And then the third noble truth is the noble truth of the way to the cessation of stress or unsatisfactoriness. And the fourth noble truth is the magga, the path that leads to the cessation of unsatisfactoriness. So as I was studying this material, I realized that the basic material that the Buddha had taught, this was all taught in his first sermon, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which was the first sermon that he taught after his own self-awakening. And he taught this sermon to his former ascetic training partner named Venerable Kondana. And you might want to read that, actually. I think the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta really contains the essence of what the historical Buddha taught, without a lot of the religious trappings. And I think it's a really useful piece of literature to read, piece of philosophy to read. But in that, he explained the Four Noble Truths. And again, the truth of stress, the cause of stress, the way to end stress, and the path which leads to the end or the cessation of stress. And as I was analyzing that, I just broke that basic framework down and realized what he was really teaching was a framework of problem, cause, vision, path. So we're going to use that framework in our strategic thinking to help you be able to move to a more intuitive position with your strategic thought, with your decision making, and so on. We're also going to use this strategic insight protocol that really trains you to develop what von Clausewitz called Coup. So let's talk a little bit about this framework, this PCVP framework, or problem, cause, vision, path, strategic framework. So the first thing that we've got, the first element of this, again, you see this follows a 4-element model. So we're just going to talk about this in general terms. We're going to say that generally, in most people's cases, the problem probably lies in not succeeding in identifying and obtaining the things that you really want. So this problem has a past, this problem has a present, this problem has a future if you carry on this same trajectory, but this problem also has an alternative path or an alternative trajectory which you can choose. Now, we're just using this as an example. If we're talking about personal development, success, achieving your goals in general. So we could say that a lot of times the cause of the problems would be previous failures, lack of influence, lack of self-discipline, and lack of understanding, either of the problem, of yourself, of the environment or the terrain, or whatever the case might be. So in our example, the vision for this is to gain more physical, social, mental, and post-personal power quickly and easily, and get more of what you want and less of what you don't want, while gaining more freedom and more time. So in this, we're going to talk about what a framework is, what strategy is, the 4 elements frameworks, basically problem, cause, vision, path, the 4 elements strategies. This is going to be the insight protocol and the outcomes that you're going to achieve from mastering this and the other frameworks and really working on this as a practice. So let's talk about the path again. So we're just using this as an example. I used this framework, this problem, cause, vision, path framework when creating this course for you. So let's talk about the frameworks. We've got the 4 elements framework, the earth, water, fire, air framework that you know. We've got the PSVE framework that we're talking about right now, or this is a different framework actually that I use in teaching some of the other material here at earthwaterfireair.com, specifically some of the leadership stuff and some of the physical stuff. So this framework is PSVE. This is posture, sound, visualization, and energy. And I really use that for a lot of the ontological leadership stuff, or for leadership as a way of being rather than leadership as a set of skills. We've got our 4 circuits framework. That's the biosurvival circuitry, the socio-sexual circuitry, the rational intellectual circuitry, and the post-personal circuitry. And then we've got a Noble 4 framework. And this is really the PCVP framework that we're looking at right here. So I'm just using this as an example again to show you how this framework works. When I was developing the material for the training that you can go through here at earthwaterfireair.com. So we've got a content strategy for all of the teaching here. All of the teaching is multimedia, so mostly video, a lot of text that you can read as you're going through the video, audio, and PDFs and other types of handouts. It's all incremental. We all flow through step by step, generally with this 4 elements teaching framework of frameworks, theory, practicum, and practice. And it's reinforced through ongoing practice, continued coaching, and so on. Then we've got the context strategy. The context for the way that we're teaching here at earthwaterfireair.com and the way we're teaching our courses is just this LPMF. learn, practice, master, and forget. So we don't want you to develop a set of skills that you have to constantly be thinking about. What we want you to do is learn the frameworks, work on the practice, master the practice, and then have this just be integrated into your beingness, into who you are as a person, so that you're not constantly caught in any type of analysis paralysis. You're not always going through checklists and things like that. You're not always planning out flowcharts. Just, we want things to come intuitively to you. We want your success to come intuitively. We want you to automatically, on instinct, move to the highest point of leverage in every decision that you face. So we've got a strategic process for that path. That is situation appraisal, appraising the situation, formulation of goals and strategies, evaluation of strategies, implementation of strategies, and strategic controls. Now, we talk a lot about that in the Lost Arts of War training program. So the outcome of following this material, as I went through this PCVP framework, is a more awesome and less lame you, and more awesome and less lame life. And what that means is increased physical power, increased leadership ability, increased clarity, increased confidence, increased balance, timing, and body awareness, and a tremendously increased understanding of your place in the universe and where you are and what you are relative to existence itself. So that's a quick overview of that PCVP framework. I just wanted to go ahead and give you an example of how I personally used this framework in developing the material that goes into the trainings here at earthwaterfireair.com. So this is a very simple framework: problem, cause, vision, path. And I'll be including some worksheets for you in the Dhamma of Strategy course that will help you go through this yourself, help you master this PCVP framework, and apply this so that you're not going through some very, very dense type of strategic planning, because really what you want to be doing is executing on instinct, but you want to hone your instincts, and you want to develop your instincts to be laser precise and to be able to move to that point of highest leverage in every situation, whether it's with your physical power, your social interactions, your mental clarity, or your post-personal awareness. Now we want to get into the actual steps or the process of strategic insight. So the first thing that we want to mention is that brainstorming is the worst technique for creativity. You can't schedule what will cause a creative idea. Creative insight happens in flashes. It could happen while you're taking a shower. It could happen while you're taking your daily morning walk. You probably really have experienced things like that before. Creativity is not something that can be scheduled. What really happens is that you hear or see or read something. It goes into the shelves that we talked about. Sometime later, it connects with something else in your brain while you're walking, taking a shower, or daydreaming, or something like that. So what we want to do is a process of journaling. So you want to write down any flashes of insight you have throughout the week or through the month, and encourage yourself or encourage your team to do the same, and talk about and share those insights with others. You want to schedule regular meetings for you and your group to talk about the insights that came up randomly through the week. Then we want to begin working with this insight matrix. This insight matrix that we're going to be working on came from General Electric in the 1990s when it was being run by Jack Welch, and Steve Kerr was the chief learning officer. What this insight matrix does is makes new combinations of previous elements of the basic problem-solving method of the company or the group. So really we're just giving you a step-by-step practice or framework to begin training strategic insight or natural strategic thinking. The insight matrix takes what your brain naturally does in a Coup and turns it into a process. which comes between strategic analysis and strategic planning. So you need the insight after you do your analysis, but before you do your planning. So strategic analysis is just studying your situation. Strategic planning is creating the path. The insight, the natural strategic creativity comes between these two. The insight matrix helps us to produce the main idea of what to do. So let's talk about the process of this insight matrix. Let's move over here a little bit so we can see this more clearly. At the top, you write down your current understanding of the situation, which is subject to change. Then you list as rows what actions you think you should take to be successful in the situation. This is also subject to change. Then you need to ask a very important question. Has anyone else in the world ever made progress on any piece of this puzzle? The sources to search go across the top as columns, which are also subject to change. Then the leader or the team then search for previous elements for the list of actions across the sources to find a good combination. So here we have a look at this. This is basically what it looks like. Here at the top, we're going to write down our basic problem. And then we're going to break that down into as many micro problems or micro elements as possible. And then for each of those small problems, we want to find precedents in the past for how people dealt with those problems. So element one might be, your problem might be how to train people to be more successful in their lives, more physical power, more social power, more mental power, more personal power. And if we're talking about physical power, for example, or let's do strategic power or mental power. So one problem, or we could term the problem and say that people don't understand strategic thinking. That would be just a very general example of the problem. So the first element would be maybe they've never been taught a strategic process before. The second problem may be that they've looked at strategic thinking. Maybe they've read business books like Sun Tzu for business, or Sun Tzu for managers, or Sun Tzu for leaders, or Sun Tzu for tying your shoelaces. There are about 1 million of these different types of things available. But they might not have had enough of a context to really understand what Sun Tzu was talking about, because it's a little bit abstract. It's a little bit rooted in this sort of non-dual Taoist thought. So possible elements for that, possible precedents. I know in my own personal case, doing a lot of research into other Bingfas, other arts of war, helped me fill in a lot of the gaps. Another element of the problem of people not being able to think strategically might be that they can't have presence of mind. So we look back for precedents to develop presence of mind. An example of that would be the teaching of the Buddha. So lots of different examples of those types of things. So you break the problem into bite-sized pieces called elements. Then you search various sources for proven solutions or precedents for each element of the problem. And then you want to creatively recombine precedents into a whole new solution. So that's the insight matrix. We're going to give you handouts so that you can work on this yourself. The insight matrix works the same way as a flash of insight. Your mind moves from piece to piece in the puzzle, searching for pieces that go together or pieces that match. Once it finds them, it knows what the picture looks like or what problem you're really solving. So as you're going through this, we said everything's subject to change, because as you're figuring out which pieces go together, which elements go with which precedents, you might find that the problem you thought you were working on is not the real problem that needs to be solved. That's another reason why you don't want to be attached to outcomes. You don't want to be attached to success. Like we said, halfway through the battle, you might realize that the best option is retreat. The insight matrix allows the crowdsourcing of insight. You and your team can restate the situation, revise the action rows, or change the columns of sources or precedents. This is exactly what your brain does before a flash of insight. So that's a general overview of the process of strategic insight.